bottom line for us is that we need to make sure that this project doesn't become an energy vampire with all of the variables that have yet to be fulfilled. No proponent, no route, no money, no First Nation support.
Welcome back to Question Period. From Ottawa to Victoria, the energy deal signed between the federal government and Alberta is reverberating across the country. It opens the door to a new oil pipeline to Canada's west coast, but that outcome is far from inevitable. Standing in opposition, the BC government and coastal First Nations. Joining me now is BC Premier David Eby. Hi, Premier Eby. Pleasure to welcome you back to the show. Thanks for making the time.
Thanks for having me.
I was speaking with Minister Hodgson on the show late in the week. He indicated that he was headed to BC to meet with you. I think that meeting has taken place. I'm wondering what you can share about what occurred during your meeting.
Yeah, hot off the press, Vashi. He literally just left the office here. Well, you know, it was a challenging but frank exchange between us. I had to outline again for the minister why it is that British Columbia is concerned about what happened in Alberta in terms of this agreement about the pipeline proposal that Premier Smith is advancing. First of all, let me say, I think it's important that the Prime Minister is able to de-escalate tensions with Alberta. I think it's bad for the country when we're not all able to sit down and solve problems together. And that's why I think it was important that British Columbia should have been at the table too. We have some really big projects in BC. We are leading the country, major private sector projects. We have 4 times more projects than any other province in Canada. The reason we have those projects, why we're able to fast track and work on them, is because we have the support, or at least the tolerance, of coastal First Nations. And they understandably view the proposal of a heavy oil pipeline to the north coast of British Columbia as existential. A spill would be the end of way of life there, as well as $1.7 billion in economic activity and thousands of jobs. And so any conversation that is about that part of the world that doesn't include them, that is about heavy oil to the coast, threatens their support for major projects that we're trying to advance here in BC that are going to lift up the Canadian economy. The largest private sector investment in Canadian history, LNG Canada Phase 2, is reaching final investment decision in the next year. They have all their permits. There's a company. They're ready to go. We rely on the tolerance of coastal First Nations to be able to get this project across the finish line.
Have those First Nations, well, I have a 2-part question. First of all, was the minister receptive to that argument? Second of all, have those coastal First Nations been explicit? Because I have heard you say it on multiple occasions, and I have poured through all of their comments. You're right that is existential to them, that they are against the development of any additional bitumen pipeline that would go to that coast. But I have not heard them say, if even discussions occur or the prospect is there, then we won't go forward with anything to do with any LNG project.
No, they've not said that, but they have said very clearly, and they said it as recently as yesterday, that their support for significantly increased marine traffic through the Hecate Strait is dependent on there not being a heavy oil pipeline as part of that package. And they, understandably, feel they have not been part of any conversation with the federal government. They need to be. They need to be front and center. That's why in BC we're able to advance the projects that we're advancing. And these aren't minor projects. These projects, the total about $90 billion and access the exact markets that are being targeted by the Prime Minister. And unfortunately, Alberta is, even on the most optimistic take, many years behind us in terms of this proposal. They have no project proponent. They have no money, they have no route, and they certainly don't have First Nation support.
I understand that. I wonder, though, is there a way to mitigate that problem by simply outlining what you just did, which is that now there are conditions in which maybe a private proponent comes forward, but that proponent has not come forward. We don't have any indication that that will be the case. There also isn't even a route specified, right? Like it could go to Kitimat, but it also could go to Vancouver. Like we don't know for sure. The market will likely dictate that, and then the federal government will have to decide whether to approve it. Like, is there not a way to mitigate the concerns you have instead of kind of presenting an immovable position?
Yeah, well, I think it's important to maybe make the position of British Columbia clear here. The coastal First Nations are the ones that need to be at the table on this issue. Their concerns need to be addressed, and they need to be heard. It's since the late 70s that they've taken this position. And politicians of every stripe for generations have understood it, been clear about the fact that there shouldn't be oil tankers in this area because of the nature of the water and the dangers. Like we just had a big container barge just about go down. We had a big diesel spill with the Nathan Stewart that contaminated a huge area. Like these are rough waters. And that's why it's been supported by politicians over many generations. So if in fact the plan is to leave the oil tanker ban in place and not to go to the North Coast, then they're the first group that should be told that. And I would welcome that because it would make it so much easier for us to have the hard conversations we have to have about the projects that actually do exist, that are going to employ a lot of people and bring a lot of money into this country.
Is your position, Premier, that you have expressed prior to the actual formal MOU being released, that you don't want to see additional bitumen pipeline? Like, is that contingent on it going to an area where the coastal First Nations have expressed the position that they have? Or are you just writ large against it happening at all, even if it went somewhere else?
I think it's a grave mistake to get rid of the oil tanker ban off the north coast of British Columbia. I think that the risk of an oil spill is really significant in terms of the economic harm. Every Canadian that enjoys seafood across the country, a good chunk of it comes from these waters. There are thousands of fishing jobs. There's huge tourism jobs, and it is a big deal. But we've tried to put forward other proposals. You know, there is a publicly owned pipeline. That this is not the first time Alberta has had this discussion with Ottawa. Prime Minister Trudeau built a publicly owned pipeline. It cost $30 billion. It's operating right now. I can almost see it from where I'm sitting, actually. And it's not operating at capacity. It could be optimized further to add significant additional capacity. We've offered that up to Alberta to say, hey, we're happy to work with you on this. And I say happy, but it's gritted teeth. We fought that pipeline pretty hard for similar concerns. But it's built now. It's publicly owned. It is a moment for Canada. We're willing to sit at the table and work out those details and get it done. And so trying to find a path forward, trying to de-escalate tensions with our neighbors, trying to understand their concerns, what they would like to do. And I really hope they do the same for us. We are trying to deliver some really big projects here in BC. We have the permits, the companies. We've been doing work for years with the First Nations. They're just starting in Alberta. Don't screw up our stuff because it is meaningful for the whole country. It means jobs for families. It means tax revenues for Ottawa to pay for public services. And that it doesn't feel like too much to ask.
Beyond, though, the optimization of TMX, I take your point on that. I take your point on the tanker ban. If you know there is the possibility of additional export capacity beyond that does not impact the tanker ban, are you inherently against that? Is my question.
No, I think we can have those conversations. My anxiety is about this oil tanker ban, which is the foundational social license piece for tens of billions of dollars of investment in BC that is nearing final investment decision, and tens of billions of dollars of investment that is medium term as well, like expansion of the Port of Prince Rupert and so on. And so if we can agree that the oil tanker ban is going to stay in place, then let's have those conversations. I think that would make life a lot better and easier in British Columbia in terms of our relationship with coastal First Nations, and would definitely take down the temperature and maybe enable some creative solutions. I'd love to talk about refining. We're buying oil and gas from the United States right now. Let's refine some of that Alberta bitumen and use it in cars in British Columbia. Lots of people still driving gas cars, myself included. And why don't we do projects that add value to Canadian resources and get a net win for everybody out of that?
You sound, I hope you don't mind me saying, you sound less angry than you did the previous few times that we spoke about this prior to the MOU. Is there a reason for that?
Well, you know, look, if the federal government is going to impose this on British Columbia, they're going to impose it on British Columbia. We've been down that road. I don't think it's beneficial to be fighting. The piece that does, Vashi, if you're looking for Premier Eby agitated,
I'm not looking for it. I'm just curious. I promise.
Well, no, of course not. But the Nutrien decision gets me agitated because instead of Premier Scott Moe calling me up, engaging with me about this huge billion-dollar decision about whether to ship potash out of British Columbia or out of Washington State. He was engaging with Danielle Smith on this non-existent pipeline project. I didn't hear from the federal government about the Nutrien decision. I had no idea that there was even a prospect that this company would consider putting themselves in the hands of Donald Trump to have tariffs or ban of potash being shipped out of Washington State. And they made the decision, apparently, to ship out of Washington State instead of out of British Columbia. We should have been talking about their concerns about clogged up rail lines and access to the port. We should have been front of the line advocating with Saskatchewan, with the federal government, for resources around rail to deal with that. But instead, it was a huge amount of energy went into this non-existent pipeline project. And my worry is we're taking our eyes off the prize.
Okay, I will leave it on that note. Premier, thank you so much. Appreciate your time as always.
You bet, Vashi. Good to see you.
When we come back, the politics of the pipeline. The MOU between the feds and Alberta brings Premier Danielle Smith alongside the Prime Minister, but complicates, as you just heard, Ottawa's relationship with BC and costs the Prime Minister a cabinet minister. The Sunday strategy session with Kathleen Monk, Corey Tenike, and Scott Reid will be here to talk about all of that.